Did you know that everything you do affects others, even if you don't know them? We are all connected more than you imagine. This video will show you how this invisible network that unites all living beings works, and how understanding it can change your way of living. We're going to look at a very powerful Buddhist story. We'll talk about how to apply it to your daily life, and I'll give you practical ideas to live with more awareness and purpose. It's not just theory, it's a way of seeing the world that can bring you more peace, clarity, and connection. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights on living with purpose and connection. Together, let's awaken to the beauty of interdependence. We are all connected, though we don't see it. Imagine waking up one morning, preparing your coffee and sitting by the window. It seems like a simple scene, but behind that moment, there are hundreds of invisible threads connecting you with other people, animals, elements of nature, and decisions that you may never know about. That coffee you're drinking comes from the work of farmers in another country, from transporters, from people who built the roads where it arrived, from whoever designed the coffee maker, from water that comes from a river that started in a mountain. And we could continue like this with everything around you. But this is not just a production chain, it's a mirror of life itself. Nothing in this world exists by itself. Everything depends on something else to be there. You wouldn't be alive without air, without water, without the affection of someone who cared for you, without millions of living beings that are part of your food and your environment. This connection is much deeper than it seems. It's not just practical, it's also emotional and spiritual. That's why when we say we are connected, it's not just a nice phrase, it's a reality. But since we don't see those threads, we often live as if we were alone, as if our actions didn't affect anyone, as if our problems were only ours. And that illusion of separation is the root of many of our sufferings. What changes everything is realizing it, and we're not talking about understanding it in your head, but feeling it. Feeling that everything you do leaves a mark, that every gesture you have with another being can be a spark of light or a shadow, that you yourself are a network of connections. Your thoughts affect you, your emotions influence your body, your words build realities around you. When you see the world like this, your way of looking changes. It changes the way you talk to others, how you eat, how you work, how you walk down the street. You realize that taking care of yourself is also taking care of others, and that helping others also helps you, because everything else vibrates in this network. Many think that happiness lies in achieving something, being successful, reaching goals. But true peace comes when you understand this deep connection, when you realize that you are part of something bigger, that your life has meaning not because you do great things, but because you are interwoven with the whole. Each small action of yours can be part of a larger transformation, and there the magic begins, because by living with that awareness, you begin to act from another place, from compassion, from karuna, which is nothing more than real sensitivity to the suffering of others and the profound desire to alleviate it. And when you feel that, you can't go back because your heart has opened. So before continuing, I invite you to look around you. Whatever you have nearby, each object, each being, each sound, all of that is connected to you and you to them. And that is one of the most powerful truths you can discover. What Buddha taught about how everything depends on everything. More than 2,500 years ago, Buddha observed the world with a depth that still leaves us speechless today. He sat to meditate under a tree, but what he saw wasn't just his mind, it was how everything was connected. He didn't talk about complicated theories, he talked about what we can all observe if we pay attention. Nothing appears out of nowhere. Everything arises because there are conditions that allow it. Buddha taught something very simple but very profound. Nothing exists by itself. Everything depends on something else to exist. If there is a flower, it's because there was soil, sun, water, time, seeds, hands that cared for the plant. If there is an emotion in you, it's because something happened before. If there is a word, it's because there is a thought behind it. If there is suffering, it's because there is a cause. If there is peace also, this way of seeing life is like looking at a fabric. If you pull one thread, not just that point moves, the whole fabric moves. That's how our existence works, and that has profound implications because it means that everything you do has consequences. And it's not said as a threat, but as an invitation to live with awareness. Instead of thinking that you are at the center of the universe, this vision tells you, you are part of the universe. You are not separate. And if you are connected, then you can also influence, participate, care, change. Many people feel that their problems are like an impossible mountain to climb, but when you look with these eyes, you see that those problems don't come from nowhere. There are causes, and if there are causes, there are ways to transform. We are not trapped. What we live now is the result of thousands of things that happened before, but it is also the starting point for what will come next. The most beautiful thing about this is that you don't need to have everything under control. You just need to pay attention to what you are feeding. What thoughts do you water each day? What kind of words do you use? What intentions are behind your actions? Because all of that generates the conditions for what comes next. Just as a seed bears fruit, our actions and attitudes also bloom at some point. And if you wonder how to apply this in your life, it's as simple as observing. Observe what things do you good, what people add to you, what habits bring you closer to peace, and start cultivating more of that. Stop fighting with what you can't control, and start sowing what you can. Buddha didn't want to be worshipped. He wanted each person to see the truth for themselves. And this truth is within everyone's reach. It's in the plate you eat, in the emotion you feel, in the decision you make. Everything depends on something, and that gives us power. Because if we understand the causes, we can also create new conditions. So instead of living as if you were an island, start seeing yourself as part of a great river. A river where every drop matters, where everything flows and changes, and where you too can be the cause of something beautiful for yourself and for others. The story of a magic net that reflects everything. In the Buddhist tradition, there is an ancient story that explains in a very visual way this connection between all beings. It's one of those images that stays with you forever. It's called Indra's net. Imagine an infinite net that extends in all directions. At each point where the threads cross, there is a jewel, and each jewel not only shines with its own light, but reflects all the other jewels in the net. Each one contains the reflection of all the others, and each reflection contains all the other reflections in an endless game. What does this mean? That you are not alone. You are like one of those jewels. You shine with your own light, yes, but within you are also all the others. And what you do, think, or say is reflected in others, and what they do is also reflected in you. There is no way to separate one jewel from the rest without affecting the entire net. This story is not a fantasy. It's a very clear metaphor for how life works. When a person suffers, that suffering doesn't stay locked within them. It transmits, it expands. The same happens with joy, with love, with generosity. Every emotion, every act is a wave that propagates throughout the net. Imagine what happens when you help someone. That person feels seen, cared for. Perhaps that gesture gives them strength to care for another. And so, without realizing it, you start a chain of compassion that can reach much further than you imagine. The same happens in reverse. A harsh word, a lack of attention, can also spread. That's why this magic net teaches us a great lesson. What you do always matters, even if you don't see the immediate effect, even if no one thanks you for it, even if you think it's something small. In Indra's net, nothing is small, everything is reflected. It also reminds us that we are not separate. When someone suffers, it's not their problem, it's ours, because deep down, we all touch each other. Another's joy can also be your joy, if you have an open heart. And your compassion, your karuna, can be the light that illuminates another in a dark moment. This story is an invitation to live with more presence, to remember that each moment, each encounter, each word is part of something bigger, and that when you act with love, you are beautifying the entire net, not just your little piece. So each day, when you make a decision, however small, ask yourself, what am I reflecting today? What kind of footprint do I want to leave in this infinite net? Because everything counts and you do too. What does this have to do with you? Maybe so far everything sounds nice, even inspiring, but perhaps you're wondering, and how does this affect me in concrete terms, in my daily life, with my problems, my work, my relationships? And that's the best question you could ask, because this idea that we are all connected is not just a concept to reflect on, it's a tool to transform your way of living. Think of it this way. If you understand that your actions affect others, then everything you do begins to have more meaning. You're no longer acting on autopilot. You're not just fulfilling a routine. You begin to live with intention. For example, if you treat someone well, you don't do it just to be polite, but because you know that it can ease their day, and perhaps that will make that person treat others better. That's the real power you have. We all have it. And the same happens with you. When someone speaks to you with love, really listens to you, is interested in you, something changes inside you. You relax, you open up, you feel accompanied. That shows that we all influence each other all the time, even if we don't notice it. Look at your closest relationships. What happens when you're irritated? Your energy spreads, and if you're at peace, it also shows. Your emotional state is not just yours, it spreads to those around you. What you do with your body, your mind, your words, everything has an echo. That's not pressure, it's freedom. Because if you become aware of that, you can start to choose better. It also has to do with how you treat those you don't know. The person who serves you in a store, someone who is on the same bus, or someone you pass on the street, it's easy to forget about them, to treat them as if they don't matter. But if you remember that they are in the same network as you, that they also feel that they also have stories you don't know, you begin to see them with different eyes, and that changes your world. Another way to see it is when you face your own challenges. Sometimes we believe that we have to do everything alone, that asking for help is a sign of weakness. But if we accept that we are connected, then receiving help is part of the game. Giving and receiving are part of the same thing. We all need everyone. Accepting that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Interdependence also allows you to let go of unnecessary guilt, because you understand that who you are today didn't come from nowhere. It's the result of many influences, decisions, wounds, learnings. That doesn't mean you have no responsibility, but it does mean you can treat yourself with more compassion and from there start building something new. So yes, this has everything to do with you because it gives you back power, not the power to control everything, but the power to act with awareness, to influence your environment, to live with purpose, to be a brighter jewel in this infinite net that we all share. How to live each day with that awareness. Knowing that we are all connected sounds beautiful, but what's truly transformative is beginning to live it. And this is where many people get stuck. They understand the idea, they even feel it, but they don't know how to put it into practice in their day-to-day life. That's why in this chapter, we're going to bring everything down to earth with concrete actions, real decisions, and small habits that can have a big impact. First, something very simple but powerful. Stop. Yes, pause for a moment, because we live at a speed that doesn't let us see the network. When you're running, you ignore everything that doesn't directly affect you. Instead, when you stop for an instant, you begin to see the connections. You can do it when you wake up, before going to bed, or while walking. Just a few seconds to look around and ask yourself, what or who made this moment possible? This act of stopping connects you with gratitude. And gratitude is not just saying thank you, it's seeing clearly. It's realizing that behind everything you use, there are people, animals, earth, water, energy. When you give thanks, your way of relating changes. You no longer take everything as if it were obvious. You begin to treat things and others with more care. That is already living with interdependent awareness. Another simple gesture is to truly listen. It sounds basic, but it's hard. Listening to someone without interrupting, without thinking about what you're going to answer, without wanting to be right, just being present. When you listen in that way, you are recognizing the other as part of you. You're giving them a real space, and that transforms relationships, calms tensions, creates bridges, because often what people need is not to be saved but to be seen. Then there's the power of small acts. In a world that glorifies the big, the spectacular, we forget that the small sustains life. A kind greeting, picking something up from the floor, giving way to someone, sharing your food, looking with tenderness. Each of these gestures is a seed. And a seed, when it falls on good soil, can bear fruit for a long time. So don't underestimate the impact of what you do when no one sees you. In the web of life, everything is noticed. Another important practice is to review your consumption habits. Everything you buy has a story behind it. Where does it come from? Who does it affect? Do you really need it? It's not about living with guilt, but with more clarity. For example, choosing local products when you can, supporting small producers, reducing plastic use, taking care of water, reusing, recycling. All those daily decisions are also ways of caring for the net. And then there's the practice of karuna, active compassion. That means not remaining indifferent to the suffering of others, but it also means not staying in the complaint. It's looking at what's happening in the world and asking yourself, what can I do from where I am? Sometimes it will be a direct action, helping, donating, accompanying. Other times it will be an internal transformation. Stop judging, forgive, cultivate patience. Compassion is not always grand, but it is always powerful. You can also practice silence, not empty silence, but that space where you can listen to yourself without noise, without hurry. In that space, truths appear that in the noise are not heard. You realize what you need to let go of, what you're repeating by inertia, what you could change. And when you listen to yourself, you can also start to listen better to the world. Living with interdependent awareness also means accepting your humanity. You're not going to be perfect. Sometimes you'll act from ego, from fear, from habit. But if each day you come back to remember that you are part of something bigger, that simple act of remembering is already a way of healing. It's a way of returning to the center. Finally, connect with beauty. Observe nature, look at the sky, listen to music that touches your soul. Look into the eyes of those you love. All of that is also part of the net. Not everything is responsibility. There is also joy, wonder, deep connection. We are not here just to fulfill tasks, but to live, feel, share. So it's not about completely changing your life, but about changing how you live it, with more presence, more intention, more connection. Because when you live from there, each day becomes sacred. Each gesture matters, each being counts, and so do you. Why your relationships change when you understand this. One of the places where interdependence is most noticeable is in our relationships, with family, friends, partners, co-workers, even with people we barely know. When you understand that you are not separate from others, that your well-being and theirs are deeply connected, your relationships begin to change naturally. First, your way of looking changes. You stop seeing others as obstacles, threats, or simple background figures in your story. You begin to see that each person who crosses your path is fighting their own battle, that just like you, they want to be happy, to be accepted, to feel safe, that they also have wounds, fears, stories that you don't know. That more compassionate gaze opens the door to true respect. When you live from the awareness that your words and actions profoundly affect the other, you begin to speak with more care. It's not about censoring yourself, but about being aware of the impact you can generate. Sometimes we think that a harsh joke or an impulsive comment doesn't matter, but they can leave a mark. The same is true for words of encouragement, gestures of affection, sincere listening. What you give comes back. What you sow grows. A healthy relationship is not based only on love or affinity. It's based on conscious interdependence. This means that you understand that the other is not there to complete you or to meet your expectations. They are there as a mirror, as a fellow traveler, as another jewel in the net. By seeing others this way, you free yourself from the desire to control and from frustration when they are not as you want them to be. You learn to accept, to let go, to appreciate what they are and what they contribute, even in difficult moments. Your way of resolving conflicts also changes. When you see the other as part of you, you don't want to win a fight. You want to understand, build, heal. You begin to stop fighting to be right and instead look for what unites, what helps both of you grow. Differences are no longer threats, but opportunities to broaden your perspective. Another important point is that of broken bonds. It has happened to all of us. Someone moves away, trust breaks, it hurts. But when you remember that everything is connected, that you and that person are in the same net, even if you no longer speak, you can begin to let go of resentment. You can continue to wish them well. You can release the weight without the need for reconciliation. Because forgiving is not forgetting or justifying. It's stopping carrying what doesn't let you move forward. And there's something even deeper. You realize that you also need others, not as a need of dependency, but as a natural part of life. Asking for help, showing yourself vulnerable, letting yourself be cared for, all of that becomes easier when you understand that we are not made to live in isolation, that the network not only works when you give, but also when you receive. Living with this awareness transforms even the most difficult bonds. Sometimes it's enough for you to change for something in the relationship to start moving, not because the other changes, but because your way of being is no longer the same. And that in many cases opens new spaces where there was tension, dialogue appears. Where there was judgment, curiosity appears. Where there was coldness, tenderness appears. Your relationships are one of the most visible forms of your connection with the world. It's not about having perfect relationships, but about living them with more presence, more honesty, more compassion. In the end, each encounter is an opportunity to remember that you and the other are not two separate worlds. You are two reflections of the same net. The planet is also connected to you. When we talk about interdependence, we're not just talking about people. We're also talking about the planet. The earth, water, air, trees, animals, everything that makes up nature is deeply linked to us. And although we often forget it, we are not something separate from the earth. We are the earth breathing, walking, making decisions. What we do to the planet, we do to ourselves. Think about something as simple as breathing. You couldn't do it without trees, without oceans, without the invisible balance that keeps everything functioning. We eat thanks to fertile soil, to the sun, to bees, to the seasons. We live in houses built with materials that come from the planet. We drink water that traveled through mountains, clouds, and rivers. There isn't a single moment in your life when you're not receiving something from the natural world, and yet the pace at which we live often ignores that connection. We take more than we give back. We use without thinking. We pollute without seeing the consequences. But when you awaken to interdependence, something changes. You begin to see that there is no trash. There are materials that are being discarded. There are no resources. There are beings and elements that also need care. There is no out there. Everything that goes into the world comes back to you in one form or another. This is where consciousness becomes action. Because it's not enough to feel love for nature if we continue to consume irresponsibly. Change begins with small daily decisions, using less plastic, choosing local products, walking instead of using the car when possible, reducing waste, taking care of water, supporting sustainable projects. No gesture is insignificant when it comes from connection. It's also important to reconnect with nature, not just as an environment, but as a living being, spending time outdoors, observing a tree, touching the earth, listening to the wind. These things that seem simple awaken something deep. They remind you that you are not alone, that you are part of a great family of living beings. And when you feel that, the desire to protect, to care for, to honor that network that sustains you is born. And it's not about living with guilt, but with awareness. No one can do it perfectly, but we can do it better. We can wake up from that automatic way of life that only seeks comfort without seeing the cost. We can choose with more love, more respect, more connection, because every decision has an echo, and you can be a source of balance in a world that desperately needs it. You can also share this with others. Teach the little ones to care for what cares for them. Talk to your loved ones about these things, not from judgment but from love. Inspire, spread, sow. Compassion for the planet is not different from compassion for a loved one. It's the same energy, the same karuna expanding towards everything that lives. In the end, understanding interdependence with nature is remembering something very simple. The planet is not a place where we live, it's what we are. And only when we take care of it are we really taking care of ourselves. The most powerful way to start living differently. After all that we've shared, perhaps you now look at the world with different eyes. And that alone is already a huge change, because the first step to living with more meaning is to see clearly. To see that you are not alone, that you are part of something much bigger than you, a living, vibrant network that sustains you, and that you also sustain with every thought, every word, every action. And the most transformative thing is knowing that you don't have to do great things to start living differently. You don't need to wait until you have everything figured out or change everything in one day. You just need to start today, with what you have, where you are. That's the most powerful way to live with awareness. You can start by observing more, by asking yourself, what am I generating with my way of being in the world? How are my relationships? What energy do I leave when I pass through a place? What impact do my decisions have? These questions are not to blame you, but to awaken you, because living awake is the greatest act of love you can have for yourself and for others. You can also start practicing karuna, that active compassion that doesn't stay in intention, but moves, acts, transforms. Sometimes it will be with a kind word, with attentive listening, with a silent gesture that makes a difference. Other times, it will be with a healthy boundary, with an act of courage, with a decision that comes from the heart. All of that is compassion. All of that is connection. Remember that each day is an opportunity to strengthen that invisible network that unites us. You can do it by taking care of your thoughts, sowing gratitude, repairing bonds, forgiving what already weighs too much, choosing with more awareness. You can do it when you feed yourself, when you consume, when you speak, when you choose how to live, because each act has its echo, and you, with your way of being, can be a force of harmony in the midst of chaos. Maybe you can't change the whole world, but you can change someone's world, and that already changes everything. Because when one jewel in the net shines with more force, it also illuminates the others. That's how life works. That's how compassion works. That's how interdependence works. And now that you're here, that you've made it to the end, I want to invite you to something more. If this video touched something in you, if some idea moved you, if some word inspired you, I invite you not to keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel to continue sharing this path. Here, we talk about what really matters, about what transforms, about what unites us. And if you have something to say, a reflection, an experience, a question, leave it in the comments. I would love to read you, hear you, continue weaving this network with you, because this space is not just a channel, it's a meeting point, a community of beings who seek to live with more meaning, more compassion, more connection. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this. And remember, you are not alone. You never were. You never will be, because we all are truly, deeply connected. With gratitude, Daily Dharma.